The dust settled, but not the ache. His daughter, unburied, lay still. The cowboy couldn't bury his daughter, because the Comanche who arrived said, "She is mine." A father's final act stolen, his world shattered, subscribed to witness the unholy claim. The sun, a brutal eye in the vast, indifferent sky, beat down on the raw earth. Each shovelful of soil was a testament to a love now fractured, a future extinguished. The cowboy's hands, calloused from years of wrangling and toil, trembled as they shaped the shallow trench, a final cradle for his little girl. Her small, still form, wrapped in the faded quilt his wife had sewn, lay beside the fresh mound, an unbearable weight in the silent, echoing landscape. Every breath was a struggle against the dust and the crushing grief that threatened to collapse his very being. He had promised her forever, a lifetime of laughter and wide-open spaces, but now only this desolate patch of ground remained. The silence of the prairie was a cruel mockery, amplifying the screams trapped within his chest, a symphony of unshed tears and unspoken goodbyes. His eyes, red-rimmed and swollen, traced the delicate curve of her cheek, the faint shadow of a smile that once lit up his world. He remembered her chasing butterflies through fields of wildflowers, her tiny boots kicking up dust, her joyous shouts carried on the wind. Now, the wind only whispered of absence, a cold, hollow sound that pierced his soul. He knelt, his knees sinking into the loose dirt, and reached out a trembling hand, not to touch but to hover, as if disturbing her peace would be another unforgivable sin. The weight of the shovel in his hand felt impossibly heavy, a burden of finality he was not ready to bear, yet compelled to complete. This was his last duty, his last act of fatherhood, to lay her to rest beneath the endless sky. A shadow fell across the grave, not from the sun, but from something vast and imposing. The air shifted, growing heavy with an unspoken presence, a primal energy that vibrated through the very ground. The cowboy, lost in his private agony, felt it before he saw it, a cold dread creeping up his spine, a premonition of further violation. He slowly lifted his gaze, his eyes still blurred with tears, to meet a figure silhouetted against the blinding light. A warrior, stoic and unyielding, stood at the edge of his sorrow, a silent sentinel of an ancient world. The earth seemed to hold its breath. The wind stilled, as if acknowledging the arrival of something profoundly significant, something that would irrevocably alter the sacred moment. The warrior's eyes, dark and piercing, held a depth that spoke of generations, of a connection to the land that transcended mere ownership. There was no aggression in his stance, no overt threat, only an undeniable authority that radiated from him like heat from a desert stone. The cowboy's hand instinctively tightened on the shovel, a futile gesture of defense against a force he could not comprehend. His grief, so raw and consuming, was suddenly overshadowed by a new, terrifying emotion: bewilderment. Why was this man here, at this sacred private moment? What ancient law or unspoken claim had drawn him to this desolate place, to this unfinished grave? The very air crackled with an unspoken tension, a clash of worlds. The warrior took a slow, deliberate step forward, his gaze fixed not on the cowboy, but on the small, still form beside the grave. It was a look of recognition, of profound understanding that sent a shiver down the cowboy's spine. It was as if the warrior saw something in his daughter that he, her father, could not, a hidden truth or an ancient connection. The cowboy's heart pounded against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat of fear and confusion. His daughter, his precious, innocent child, was now the focal point of an encounter he could not fathom, a silent pawn in a cosmic game he did not understand. The sacred act of burial was now a stage for an unfolding drama, a violation of his final farewell. Then the words came, not shouted, but spoken with a quiet, resonant power that echoed across the vast emptiness. Each syllable was a hammer blow to the cowboy's already shattered heart, a declaration that ripped away his last vestige of control, his last right to his own grief. The warrior's voice, deep and unwavering, carried the weight of generations, of a claim older than the very mountains. The cowboy's world, already in ruins, crumbled further, leaving him exposed and utterly helpless. This was not a request, not a negotiation, but an absolute decree that left no room for argument or appeal. His daughter, unburied, became a silent testament to a claim that transcended his love. The words hung in the air, a chilling pronouncement that defied logic, shattered the sanctity of the moment and ripped the very breath from the cowboy's lungs. She is mine. Not a question, not a plea, but a statement of absolute possession, delivered with an authority that left no room for doubt or defiance. The shovel slipped from his grasp, clattering against the hard earth, the sound jarring in the profound silence that had descended upon the scene. His mind reeled, struggling to comprehend the impossible, to reconcile the warrior's claim with the undeniable reality of his daughter's death, her cold, still presence beside the open grave. This was a nightmare, a cruel hallucination born of his overwhelming grief. His eyes, wide with disbelief and a nascent fury, locked onto the warrior's face, searching for a flicker of malice, a hint of deception, anything that would explain this monstrous intrusion. But there was only an unwavering calm, a deep, ancient wisdom that seemed to absorb his shock and reflect it back as understanding. The warrior's gaze remained fixed on the child, a silent communion that excluded the cowboy, making him an outsider in his own tragedy. It was as if his daughter, even in death, held a secret, a connection to this land and its people that he, her father, could never comprehend, a bond forged in a realm beyond his understanding. A primal scream threatened to tear from the cowboy's throat, a guttural roar of protest against this unimaginable violation. His daughter, his flesh and blood, his heart's deepest sorrow, was being claimed by a stranger, by a world he did not belong to. The injustice of it, the sheer audacity, ignited a spark of desperate defiance within his shattered spirit. He wanted to lunge, to fight, to protect her even in her stillness, but a strange, paralyzing force held him rooted to the spot. It was not fear of the warrior, but a profound sense of helplessness, a recognition of a power that dwarfed his own, a claim that resonated with the very earth beneath his feet. The warrior slowly knelt beside the child, his movements deliberate and reverent, as if approaching something sacred. He did not touch her, but his presence enveloped her, a silent assertion of his words. The cowboy watched, transfixed by the scene, his mind a maelstrom of conflicting emotions. Grief, rage, confusion, and a terrifying sense of the unknown swirled within him, threatening to consume him entirely. He had envisioned this moment countless times. The quiet, solemn act of burying his child, a final farewell, a release into the earth. Now, that sacred ritual was desecrated, twisted into something alien and terrifying. A battle for a soul he thought was already lost to him. The air around them seemed to thicken, charged with an invisible energy, a silent dialogue between the warrior and the child. The cowboy felt a chill that had nothing to do with the desert wind, a cold dread that seeped into his bones. It was as if the very spirits of the land had awakened, drawn by the warrior's claim, witnessing this profound and unsettling exchange. He was an intruder in a moment that was both deeply personal and anciently communal, a clash of two worlds, two understandings of life and death, converging over the still form of his daughter. The silence stretched, heavy and pregnant with unspoken meaning, each second an eternity of agonizing uncertainty. He stood there, a statue of despair, his daughter's unburied body a stark symbol of his shattered world, now claimed by an echo from the wild. The warrior's eyes, still fixed on the child, seemed to see beyond the fragile shell of her body into a realm the cowboy could not perceive. There was a profound sadness in their depths, a sorrow that mirrored his own, yet was distinctly different, ancient and communal. It was not the grief of a father, but the lament of a guardian, a protector of unseen threads that wove through the land and its inhabitants. The cowboy, despite his rage and confusion, felt a strange, unsettling pull, a recognition of something profound and undeniable in the warrior's presence. It was as if his daughter, in her brief life, had somehow touched these unseen threads, becoming entangled in a destiny far grander and more mysterious than he could ever have imagined. He remembered the stories whispered around campfires, tales of spirits that roamed the plains, of ancient pacts between the land and its people, of souls claimed by forces beyond human understanding. He had dismissed them as folklore, the superstitions of a fading world, but now, standing before this unwavering warrior with his daughter's still form between them, those stories took on a terrifying, visceral reality. Was his child, his innocent, fragile girl, somehow connected to this wild, untamed world in a way he could never comprehend? Had she, in her fleeting existence, become a part of something vast and eternal, something that now asserted its claim over her final resting place? The warrior slowly rose, his gaze finally shifting to meet the cowboy's, and in that moment, a silent communication passed between them. There was no explanation, no justification offered, only a deep, resonant understanding that transcended words. It was the understanding of a force of nature, of an unyielding truth that simply was. The cowboy felt a strange resignation wash over him, a chilling acceptance of his powerlessness in the face of such an ancient, undeniable claim. His personal grief, so vast and consuming, suddenly felt small, insignificant, against the backdrop of this cosmic assertion, this deep archetypal connection to the very essence of the earth. He looked down at his daughter, her face serene in death, and for the first time he saw her not just as his child, but as a part of something larger, something that had always been here, long before his arrival. Had she, in her innocent wanderings, strayed into a sacred space, a spiritual domain that now called her back? Had her spirit, untethered by life, found its way to an ancient kinship, a belonging that transcended the bonds of blood? The thought was both terrifying and strangely comforting, a glimmer of peace in the midst of his profound despair. It was a surrender to the unknown, an acknowledgement that some mysteries were simply beyond human grasp. The warrior extended a hand, not in aggression, but in a gesture of profound, almost sorrowful finality. It was an invitation, a silent command, to step aside, to relinquish his claim, to allow an ancient ritual to unfold. The cowboy's heart ached, with a pain so deep it threatened to tear him apart, but he found himself unable to resist. His body moved almost independently, a puppet to a force he could not fight. He took a step back, then another, creating a space around his daughter, a sacred circle that now belonged to the warrior and the unseen threads that bound them. The air hummed with a quiet power, a solemn energy that filled the void left by his retreating presence. His daughter, unburied, became a bridge between worlds, her stillness a testament to an ancient, undeniable claim. The warrior began to move, not with haste, but with a deliberate, almost ceremonial grace. He did not pick up the shovel, nor did he attempt to fill the grave the cowboy had dug. Instead, he knelt once more beside the child, and with hands that seemed to know the earth intimately, he began to gather handfuls of soil, not to bury, but to bless. He sprinkled the dark, rich earth over her, a gentle rain of dust that seemed to absorb her stillness, to draw her back into the embrace of the land from which she had come. It was an act of profound reverence, a silent ritual that spoke of ancient wisdom and a deep, abiding respect for the cycle of life and death. The cowboy watched, mesmerized, his grief momentarily suspended by the sheer solemnity of the scene. This was not the burial he had envisioned, not the final farewell he had planned, but it was undeniably powerful, a sacred act unfolding before his eyes. The warrior's movements were fluid, almost hypnotic, each gesture imbued with a meaning that transcended words. He chanted softly, a low, guttural hum that vibrated through the air, a song of welcome and release, a melody that seemed to call to the very spirits of the prairie. The cowboy felt a strange calm descend upon him, a quiet acceptance of this unexpected, profound ceremony. The warrior then produced a small pouch, intricately beaded, and from it he scattered dried herbs and petals over the child, their faint, sweet scent mingling with the earthy aroma of the soil. It was an offering, a blessing, a final anointing that spoke of a journey, a passage into another realm. The cowboy's tears, which had been held captive by shock and rage, now flowed freely, not from despair, but from a profound sense of awe and a strange, bittersweet peace. He realized in that moment that this was not a theft, but a reclamation, a returning of his daughter to a lineage, a spiritual home he had never known she possessed. The warrior continued his silent ritual, his hands moving with a practiced grace, his eyes never leaving the child's face. He seemed to be communing with her, whispering ancient secrets, guiding her spirit on its journey. The cowboy felt a profound sense of humility, a recognition of his own limited understanding in the face of such deep, spiritual connection. His grief, though still present, was now tempered by a strange sense of wonder, a realization that his daughter's story was far grander, far more intertwined with the very fabric of the land than he had ever conceived. The vastness of the prairie seemed to embrace them all, a silent witness to this sacred exchange. As the last of the herbs were scattered, the warrior placed a small, intricately carved stone beside the child's head, a silent marker, a promise of remembrance. He then rose, his eyes once again meeting the cowboy's, and in their depths the cowboy saw not triumph, but a shared sorrow, a profound understanding of loss that transcended their cultural divide. It was a moment of silent communion, a recognition of the universal pain of a parent's heart, even as their paths diverged. The warrior then turned, and with a final lingering glance at the child, he began to walk away, disappearing into the shimmering heat haze of the horizon. His daughter, unburied, was now one with the earth, her spirit claimed by an ancient song. The cowboy stood alone by the unfinished grave, the sun still beating down, but the air now felt different, lighter, imbued with a quiet reverence. His daughter's body was gone, taken not by force, but by a solemn, ancient claim, absorbed back into the land. The empty space where she had lain was now filled with a profound silence, a void that echoed with the warrior's words, "She is mine." Yet, strangely, the crushing weight of despair had lessened, replaced by a complex tapestry of emotions. Sorrow, yes, but also a bewildering sense of peace, a dawning understanding of a world far deeper than he had ever known. He looked at the open grave, the raw earth he had disturbed, and realized it was no longer a symbol of his failure to bury her, but a testament to a different kind of farewell. It was a space left open, not for a body, but for a spirit that had found its true home, its ancient lineage. The shovel lay forgotten, its purpose rendered obsolete by a ritual far older than any he knew. He knelt, not to dig, but to touch the earth, feeling its warmth, its silent pulse, a connection to his daughter that now transcended the physical. She was not lost to him, but transformed, woven into the very fabric of the land. The wind, which had once whispered of absence, now carried a different tune, a soft, melancholic hum that seemed to echo the warrior's chant. It was a song of belonging, of return, of a spirit finding its way back to its ancestral roots. The cowboy closed his eyes, picturing his daughter, not in a coffin beneath the ground, but dancing with the wind. Her laughter carried on the breeze, her spirit free and boundless, forever intertwined with the vast, wild beauty of the prairie. His heart, though still aching, felt a strange lightness, a sense of release he had not thought possible. He rose, his gaze sweeping across the endless horizon, seeing the land not as a desolate wilderness, but as a living, breathing entity, teeming with unseen forces and ancient stories. His daughter was now a part of that story, a thread in the vast tapestry of the Old West, claimed by a heritage he could only begin to comprehend. The pain of her loss remained, a constant companion, but it was no longer a raw, open wound. It had begun to heal, transformed by the warrior's sacred act, by the profound realization that some bonds transcended blood, reaching into the very soul of the earth. The sun began its slow descent, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, a final, majestic farewell. The cowboy stood there, a solitary figure against the fading light, his silhouette etched against the vastness of the land. He had come to bury his daughter, but instead he had witnessed her unburdening, her return to a spiritual home. The empty grave was a paradox, a symbol of both profound loss and unexpected liberation, a testament to a love that had found its way beyond the confines of the earth. He would carry this story, this impossible truth, within him forever, a silent echo of the warrior's claim. His daughter, unburied, lived on, a whisper in the wind, forever bound to the heart of the wild.